Back.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. As we usually do most Thursdays, Ray Rickman kicks off with his big view. We appreciate the former state rep, deputy secretary of state, and now heads up Stages of Freedom for coming in and providing his perspective here in the studio. Big news today here in Rhode Island. It's something we've been keeping an eye on for quite some time now. Perhaps no one more so than the head of the Rhode Island ACLU, Steve Brown, is around the corner talking with us about the appointment of the special master today. Steve, thanks for joining us in studio.
Good to be here.
You know the drill. We've talked right to the viewers before about this very issue. Well, about food stamps and how the state has been failing to provide this basic necessity for Rhode Islanders, which you have sued for before. So talk with us about how did we get to today? We have talked a little bit about this prior, but how did we get to the point of getting a special master?
Well, this has been a long time coming. We actually filed a lawsuit against the state back in December of last year, a few months after the problems had already been shown to exist fairly seriously. We were able to resolve, at least temporarily, the case with an entry of a settlement agreement that the court ordered back in February. And what that order did was a few things. Among other things, it set benchmarks for the state to follow, that they had to timely...
Bring it a little closer over here.
Okay, they had to timely process complaints or applications that have been presented to them. 7 days for people with expedited requests, 30 days for people with regular food stamp requests. And each month, the percentage of time that they complied was supposed to go up. In addition, they were supposed to provide us monthly reports about how they were doing. Mm-hmm. And then what happened in September, after we were very concerned about the monthly report showing the decrease in how well they were complying, not an increase, the state came back and said, we can't even provide you a monthly report anymore because we're not sure that the statistics we're providing you are accurate. That prompted us to exercise our rights under the court order that was issued in February, go back before the judge and ask him to consider taking further action. And that's what led to today's court hearing where he appointed a special master.
Okay, getting a little heads up. Take one more step closer here and we'll
sure.
be good. Okay.
Sorry.
But wanted to ask you a couple things. The report that we heard from the governor's office just the other week about Deloitte having a box in the corner of applications not being processed. Did that have any bearing, or was that extraneous from obviously the legal proceedings from what you had already been entered into?
Yeah, we had filed our request to appear before the judge and asked him to take additional action before this latest revelation took place. And what you're referring to is a news release that the state issued about a week or a week and a half ago, in which they acknowledged that thousands of applications were suddenly found that had not been processed. Some of them were food stamp applications, some of them were others, but that just sort of added to the urgency when we went before the judge today that obviously something needed to be done. The state simply was incapable of taking care of this itself, even though they kept on saying, give us a little time, it'll work out. It clearly has not worked out.
And what did you think of that release when you saw it? It came in, it said, we've recouped $60 million. It was sort of a little pat on the back that they felt good that they had some money. Do you think that's the right approach when these are people's livelihoods at stake here?
Yeah, what was particularly troubling about the news release is, as you say, it began with this thing about getting all this money back, and only buried in the news release was the information about these new thousands of unprocessed applications. And it was something that had not been brought to our attorney's attention either, even though we've been going through this lawsuit for some months. So that was very troubling, the way we found out about this information, found out about these unprocessed applications. And again, I think it just added to the necessity of taking more action.
So here we are. We found out this morning, again, the special master appointed. What does this mean? What's the nuts and bolts? How often will you be in contact? How often will there be reports? And sort of for the most people who are asking for action to be taken, how soon can we expect to see something?
Well, we're hopeful that something will happen very soon. We had asked the judge to consider taking some sort of immediate action. The request that we had given was the idea we had handed out was give people whose applications are not timely processed gift cards that they can use as the state actually processes the application once the time frame has gone by. The judge was reluctant to do that immediately. He thought it was something that the special master could handle.
Okay.
It's my understanding they've already scheduled a meeting with the special master for next week, and we certainly are going to be pushing for as quick an action that can be taken as possible. Obviously, the special master has to get up to speed on what's been going on, but we are really hopeful that he recognizes, and I think the judge made clear that he recognized that there is this problem that, we can talk about dealing with UHIP, fixing these deep technological problems that clearly exist, but there needs to be some type of interim relief for the people who are suffering right now, every day. Our attorney, Lynette Labinger, who's been handling this case from the beginning, kept on quoting this quote that people aren't hungry in the long run; they eat every day, and that's what we're trying to address now.
And you've had the lawsuit filed, and just talk with us. I mean, how often do people pick up the phone and call the ACLU? Who, do you hear from people regularly? Do you hear from new folks just saying, I don't know where to turn because I'm getting no recompense from the state? I mean, how many calls are being made to the ACLU that you are hearing from?
We're still getting lots of calls. There was actually a time, maybe in April or May, when it was clear that there were still lots of problems despite the entry of the court order. We actually set up a special hotline where SNAP applicants who were running into problems, were not getting their applications processed in time, could call us. We would take down the information, and under the court order, the state had an obligation to immediately address those issues. And that's what was happening. We've not pursued as much as we had then, this idea of a hotline, but I think in light of what's going on, we will do that so that people do have this other opportunity to try to get their SNAP benefits in a more timely manner.
How did we get to this point? How did things fail so abysmally?
I think it goes back to the very beginning, and the state made a fateful decision to have this new program run despite warnings from the federal government that it wasn't ready. The failure to address it from the beginning is, I think, what got us here. I mean, they clearly have been trying to fix it, but what we have found is that for every fix, there's another problem that it creates. So, as I said, it clearly is something very deep-seated in the way the entire program was set up, and that's why we think that while it's important to try to get to the bottom of it, figure out what all these technological problems are that have kept these issues ongoing, something needs to be done right away because we're talking about people. We're talking about hungry people, poor people who need food on the table, and that's what our concern is.
And what is it, talk a little bit the role that Deming Sherman has as special master to go and kind of see where the issues are, how to, again, resolve them in an immediate fashion. But how long does a special master have to stay involved in this? Is it going to be a court-ordered babysitter for the coming year?
Well, I haven't seen the court order that was issued. It was supposed to be issued today after the court hearing. So I don't know the specifics right now of what powers the judge given Mr. Sherman, what things he will be looking into. But generally, the powers are very broad. The special master is sort of an arm of the judge and given a lot of leeway to investigate what has happened, get to the bottom of things, and then take action to try to correct some of the problems that exist. So I get the impression that he's eager to do that, and he will exercise whatever powers the judge has given him in order to provide the food stamp benefits that these people are entitled to under the law and under the court order that was entered back in February.
And as you mentioned, getting the food and the resources to those most in need is of the utmost importance. But as we talked about, the governor's office had made the release about recouping money. Is that a part of this as well? Do we expect to see a special master going after Deloitte and saying, if there's findings of wrongdoing, I mean, it has to be found, obviously, in Deloitte's side of things. I mean, what if it's found on the states? I mean, who ultimately is responsible?
Well, this is an issue that cropped up a number of times today and during the meetings that the judges had with the parties in the last few months. The state is consistently pointing to Deloitte and saying that's where the problems are. Our position is it really doesn't matter. It's the state's obligation under the law and under the court order to be providing these benefits in a timely manner. And regardless of who they think is responsible, they're the ones who have to take care of it. And if that means handing out gift cards, doing all these applications by paper and just ignoring the computer, it's their obligation, and they can't just foist it on Deloitte and say, well, they're the ones who are the problem, that's why we can't do anything. Our position is federal law requires the state to take care of this, and they're the ones who have to get these payments, these applications processed in a timely manner.
And you mentioned as quickly as next week hearing some more from the special master. Are you privy to all those communications with the courts as sort of a vested party? So anytime that the master makes communications with the state, is the ACLU kind of there at the table?
Yeah, I won't be, but our attorneys who are involved in the case, and it's not just the ACLU, there's also a national welfare rights organization that has been working with us in the case. So they will always be at the table. They will be involved in all the correspondence and conversations and meetings that I expect to go on. And so, yes, they will definitely know what's happening.
Well, we talked earlier this week. We knew this was coming. You said, wait till it happens. I'll come in, tell you a little bit more about it. So I appreciate anything else that viewers should know about before we haul you back in a couple weeks to see where things are at.
No, I do want to say that we will be, people should listen for this hotline that we may reinstitute, and just keep informed. We're going to do whatever we can to try to get some relief to those who are out there and still waiting for their benefits.
Well, Steve, I appreciate your taking the time to come in. I know you're busy. I'll let you
quite
around
all right.
the corner. We will talk with you soon, and we'll get updates from you moving forward.
Very good.
Okay,
Take
Steve
care.
Brown, thank you. Steve Brown, the executive director of the Rhode Island ACLU, has been leading the charge with pressing the state, especially on the food stamp issues, for those Rhode Islanders who aren't getting access to their benefits in a timely manner. As we did see today, a special master has been appointed to oversee the process. Steve Brown, I'm sure, will be back in studio shortly, so I appreciate him taking the time to come in. More information can be found on Go Local about the ACLU's position on today's action, so go check that out. We're going to welcome our next guest into the studio, so don't go anywhere. We've got a former New York Times science editor with a very interesting new book.